One of the biggest violations of medical ethics ever perpetrated on U.S. citizens. It started in Tuskegee, Alabama, more than 75 years ago. About 400 African Americans were part of a study to track the effects of syphilis. They did not consent to the tests, and they were intentionally denied simple treatments that could have helped them. President Clinton eventually offered an official apology, and a settlement was reached. But this week, medical experts and others are meeting to make sure something like this never happens again. And leading that effort is Amy Gutmann. She heads the Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues, and she is also the president of the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Gutmann, thanks for being with us. This is not a single incident. We've actually had many of these things happen. What is the purpose of your commission? Are we worried that these types of things are still happening today?
Allie, we can't know whether these things are happening today unless we have a fact-finding mission, and that's what President Obama has asked the Presidential Commission on Bioethics to do, to actually meet with experts and ask them, what is it today that would prevent these things from happening again? They've happened too many times in our history, and we want to make sure, and the president wants to make sure, that we can assure the American public that if they are part of a scientific experiment or a medical experiment, they will be treated with respect and fairly.
And I think it's fair to say many of us assume that the very important testing that goes on for drugs and diseases should be, and that there are rigorous standards for them. What are the basic things that you think need to be established and accepted across the board? What are the basic standards for deciding when you're using people to test medicines or diseases?
So that's exactly the right question. We should all be able to know that certain basic standards are in place when we agree to be part of a clinical trial. And those include that the trial has some value, scientific value, that it has a protocol that makes the benefits to the risk ratio favorable to the people who are in the trial. We should expect to have informed consent to the trial. We should expect that there be an independent review board that has reviewed the trial for its ratio of benefits to risk. And we also should expect that we will be treated with respect during the trial. So it ought to be something that everybody who volunteers for can expect to benefit from.
Okay, it sounds very logical, but let me go back to 1962 to 1966 at the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island, where there was an experiment using children who were mentally retarded. They were given hepatitis orally to see if they could be cured with gamma globulin. How do you deal with this consent issue with people with mental illnesses?
Well, first of all, the Willowbrook case, and there was at the same time a case in the Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital with elderly people. Those are the kinds of cases we want to make sure cannot happen again. How we deal today with children is, I call it the mother and child test we should have, which is, if it were your child, would you want your child in this experiment?
Yeah.
So it is, again, the closest, the parent or the custodian of the child ought to be fully informed and consent, but that's not enough. There also has to be an independent review board that makes sure that these experiments are beneficial on balance.
I know, given your academic history and the rigor with which you want to approach this, you don't really want to offer an evaluation of where we are right now. Tell me this, where is the United States with respect to the rest of the world? Are there places in the world that we think this is still going on and that rights are being violated?
Well, first let me say that we heard from experts yesterday in Washington, and we asked them this very question. How is the United States relative to the rest of the world? And they actually said that there are ways in which the United States is not the most favorable place to have clinical trials. And part of that is because the cost is so high. Remember, this is like a tightrope. You want to make sure you don't have trials that take so long that beneficial medicines cannot be given to people because that saves lives. At the same time, you want to make sure that trials aren't so short that they short-circuit the risks. And so you want to make sure that drugs don't go onto the market before they're actually safe. So we don't know right now how the United States is relative to the rest of the world, and that's why the President has asked me to convene an international task force of experts. And those experts are going to sit down with me, and we're going to actually discuss how different countries and the United States fare in this regard. And we should come up with a report by year's end that can inform the public as well as the President of where we stand.
Okay, we know you're having more hearings in May. We'll follow this along with you. Very curious to see what happens. Dr. Amy Gutman is the chair of the Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues and the president of the University of Pennsylvania.